Hey guys, it's Takey Onion, Mr. Onion here. So on the right hand side we have the Pixel 7 Pro. In the middle we have the S23 Ultra, and on the left we have the iPhone 14 Pro Max. Today we are going to be comparing the iPhone 14 Pro Max's 48 megapixel RAW format against the 200 megapixel of the S23 Ultra, also the 50 megapixel RAW format of the S23 Ultra. And the results will be shocking or really cool, whichever way you take it. So stay tuned, guys. So this part is super important, guys. Uh, so what is the most important thing in a camera review? Many of you will think, well, it's the camera itself. But how about your computer? What if your computer don't have a capacity to display all the pixels, for example, of the 200 megapixel? When you zoom in, it can't even load all those pixels. So, computer is one of the most important hardware limitation. Graphics card unable to load full details. Software fails to load the details in the RAM. So even if you zoom in, you can't see those pixels, they don't pop up. Um, and one pixel of your display can show only one pixel of your photo. When you understand that, that's how digital photography works or the digital world works. So if you do the math, a 4K display or a 4K computer which has a 4K display will only show 70 around 70%, I would say 69.2%, sorry, of the total pixels of a 12 megapixel photo at full screen. Now, when you split the screen to do side by side comparison like this, the it gets worse. So now each photo will have less pixel of your screen to show the details, and it 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 just gets worse and worse as the pictures are more and more megapixels. So for example, 48 megapixel RAW of iPhone, you have a 82.9% detail loss, or those 82.9% of those pixels are not even displayed at full screen. 50 megapixel RAW of Samsung, 83.4% details loss at full screen on a 4K display. 108 megapixel of S22 Ultra, 92% detail loss. So when they were doing the comparison before, they were actually looking at only 8% of the total pixels, or compared to almost 70% of the 12 megapixel. So for sure, 12 megapixel may look better on a 4K display once it's at full screen. Like once it's yeah, um, 200 megapixel even worse. So now you have a loss of 96% of display at full screen, um, when you're looking at it on your 4K. We do have 8K, right? 8K is 4 times the resolution of 4K. And for this review, guys, I have used the 8K system, a 8K computer, also a 8K TV. Why TV? Why not a monitor? Simple. Second biggest issue on camera comparison. You have tons of people doing camera comparison on their tiny MacBook computer. Now, the bigger the display, the better you can see the details because they are separated for your eyes to see the details. MacBooks, laptops, any type of small computers, screens should be totally avoided for like camera reviews. And not only that, if your display have too high the contrast ratio, if your display the color gamut is not set up correctly or calibrated, for example, a red gorilla may look like orange gorilla, right? If your display color balance is off, so you have to calibrate your display. MacBooks, laptops, you won't be able to calibrate a lot as much as you can on your smart TV. Here is an example. The same picture on the top in a small screen, you don't see a big difference. But the same picture, when you see it on a big screen, you can see a big difference between the two pictures. This is just to show you guys how the size of display affects your camera comparison. So this is my display, guys. I'm using a 6800 XT Radeon, and you can see it's at 8K resolution. This is the setting on my LG TV, guys. This is the best this TV can go after hours of calibration, and the sharpness is at 0, just to make sure the TV itself does not add any sharpness to the pictures. I want to be transparent with you guys, so I'm gonna show you guys how legit these pictures are. If I go into the properties and then to details, and if I go down, there we go. Apple iPhone 14 Pro Max. So pictures are legit, and the size is 79.3 megabyte. And on the right, if I go to properties, then details, and this is Galaxy S23 Ultra. So the pictures, when you take them, it keeps in details which hardware was used to take this picture, and the size is 33.3 megabyte, and the raw 50 megapixel raw of the S23 Ultra is 128 megabyte, which is significantly higher than the iPhone. But we're gonna find out if the details, how it compares. So let's go ahead. Let's open the first set of pictures. First with against the 200 megapixel. So I'm gonna put it side by side. So when you look at it, when it's zoomed out, they both look very, very good. But we're gonna be looking into a more pixel level to see how they compare. And let's zoom in. All right, let's go more. All right, there we go. Now we are at pixel level. So what do you think? I'm gonna explain to you guys what is going on. So you see this dark pixels and this light pixels just beside the dark, then again a set of light, then dark, then again the corners are dark. This in this is exactly what is called over sharpening. So in photo terms, this is called over sharpening, where the dark pixels gets more darker and the lighter gets more lighter. That's exactly what is over sharpening. So on the other hand, the right hand side, there's 23 Ultra's 200 megapixel. There is zero sharpening at all. In fact, the pixels are so uniform, it almost looks like a DSLR when you zoom in. So I'm gonna get the raw as well of the S23 Ultra just to compare. All right, let's open this. All right, there we go. Okay, so there is sharpening, like anything with low megapixel, there are some sharpening going on, but it's much less compared to the iPhone. When it comes to original details, none of this compete against the 200 megapixel in broad daylight. So for example, you see all these dark pixels, extra dark pixels here and there here. It's less on the S23 Ultra RAW. So technically, the RAW is a more accurate picture, at least on this picture. So second set of pictures, one more proof, guys. So if you go to properties and details, and this is 48 megapixel iPhone 14 Pro Max. All right, and same with the right hand side. If you go properties, then details, and this is 200 megapixel Galaxy S23 Ultra. And same with this properties. If you go details, Galaxy S23 Ultra. So these two sets of pictures I showed just to be transparent with you guys. From the next pictures onward, I won't show because it's just going to make the video longer. So let's open them. Sorry, this one, 48 megapixel one. And let's close this. Let's open the 200 megapixel. All right. So let's pick something to look into the details. How about here? Yeah, that sounds very good. Okay. Huge difference, right? Very, very big difference. So amount of pixels for sure, it's 4 times. It's 48 and the other one is 200, so almost a little bit more than 4 times. But how about quality of these pixels? Let's find out. You see this white, this black, this white, whereas here it's totally uniform pixels. So technically, tons of processing going on the left, on the iPhone's 48 megapixel RAW. On the right, the S23 Ultra's 200 megapixel, zero processing. It's pure details, guys. It's it's like a DSLR. This is exactly how a DSLR do the work. So technically, it's so high in megapixel, it doesn't need to add artifacts to create like unnatural reality. It doesn't need that. Look at the difference between the two. So I'll take a screenshot. Okay, let's zoom out a bit. This picture, for example, at this zoom level, you can actually crop this picture on the right and even post it on Facebook or somewhere. It's so much detail even at this amount of zoom. And if you look at this, the details on the leaves and everything, it's so much accurate, guys. So much accurate. It's unbelievable. By the way, they were moving, right? They were wind. So you can see the movement, but the 200 megapixel with moving leaves, there is no issue. It will still take a very good picture. Guys, so this set of pictures, the sun is getting softer. It's no longer as bright as before. It's almost evening. Microsoft is gonna put it to landscape. They have a problem with their software that they haven't fixed for a while. If Microsoft will ever watch this video, please fix this ASAP. So I'm gonna rotate the uh, 200 megapixel to match the orientation. So here I wanted to show you guys something. So you see when it's there is a shadow here, right? In this area. So when it comes like when the light level is low, the iPhone stops doing the sharpening. It does, but very small amount. So I'm gonna show you here. So yeah, still the 200 megapixel captures tons of details. Look at this madness here on the right. You can barely see, like you can see still on the iPhone, it held up pretty good, but you don't see those crazy sharpening that you saw in the last two pictures. So indoor shots, like low light shots, the iPhone crazy sharpening somehow like doesn't do anymore. So I'll give you an example here. This, for example, the tree, the sun is falling on it. So now, if you go at pixel level, So you can see the sharpening is here on this light side. Yeah, the S23 doesn't do sharpening at all. Like whether the light is high or low, it's just pure details here. It's the painting on the pole, but iPhone, as soon as the light is high, it starts doing those crazy sharpening and adding extra artifacts. So broad daylight, yeah, it's a problem with the 48 megapixel RAW of the iPhone. And all right, this is the next set of pictures, guys. And the light is getting a little bit low at this time of the day. And let's see how they're working, how they're. So we have been, now we're going to look into the close details. How about when range is close, how good or bad they perform with each other. So there you go, pixel level. Unbelievable, you can see the not there, whereas iPhone, it's just predicted that there were certain pixels there. But unlike the first two pictures, let's see if there's crazy sharpening on that. If I show you guys something, this is pure details, and the iPhone cannot capture that. The lens, even though it's bigger in size, but the Samsung lens, it's a much better lens, even though smaller in physical size. But efficiency, the technology, it can capture details like which the iPhone cannot, and it's a much improvement from last year. So I'm gonna show you guys S22 of last year. Where did that go? There we go. So this is S22 Ultra of last year, not the S23 of this year, the 108 megapixel. So I'm comparing that with the iPhone. You see how grainy it was. The grains were because the pixels, even though like it was 108 megapixels, but they were not efficient pixels. Um, One thing I do have to give to the last year model is even though there were grains, but there were no artifacts. Like it kept the picture original. Uh, so all these different markings and everything, um, it it still can't capture as much amount of details as 23 can. You can clearly see on the right, but still it's not terrible. I would still say the 48 megapixel of the iPhone is a bit better than last year's S22's 108 megapixel. Even though the iPhone does the sharpening, it's still better, even in daylight. Let's look at more areas to analyze this picture. So yeah, what you see is pure details versus artificial details. So on the right, this is total pure details, and on the left is artificial details. So yeah, big difference. Pixel level, if you look into it, it's a huge difference, guys. This is how they look like pixel level. And to read this text or the picture clear, you need a 2000 megapixel. 200 is not enough to get that details out. It's very small, right? It's really, really small. If you look into the picture, that's a very small part of the picture. And let's look into this part because it's a big picture. Let's see how. The iPhone and the 200 megapixel compete. So yeah, at this point, you see the building on the back. On the left, the iPhone looks like an oil painting, kinda. On the right, it does look like it's taken from a camera. It's because of the overprocessing. So that's what I was talking about. Like when there is sufficient light, I don't know why the iPhone camera system they start doing the overprocessing. And this is the RAW, 48 megapixel RAW. So you see all this white and all this dark. That's over sharpening going on. Day and night difference, guys. The picture, if you look into the quality at a pixel level, it's a day and night difference. All right, guys. So now it's sunset time, and if you remember this picture, this was, I think, the first or the second picture. Now let's find out during sunset how they perform. So let's go back to the rail. Let's look into the details. Okay. So for sure, the S23 Ultra's 200 megapixel, it still captures very beautiful picture, but not the amount of details it could capture when the daylight was sufficient, right? So you can see it's still no sharpening or anything weird going on. It's still pure details, but it's not as detailed at as it was when the light was higher. But does that mean the iPhone is suffering too? Let's find out. So what I see here at a pixel level, the sharpening, the crazy sharpening iPhone does, once again, that it was doing when the light was enough or sufficient, it doesn't do that. So it takes a less processed image, the iPhone's 48 RAW, and this is actually better, even though it's losing lots of details. But from a technical view, it's a better picture. It doesn't have crazy over sharpening going on. But when it comes to details comparison, still, even at sunset, the S23's 200 megapixel is better. So I'm gonna also find out how about the RAW of the S23 during evening, right? Let's find out. I would say similar, but maybe a bit better color because yeah, this is definitely not dead color like the iPhone. It's a yellow sign, like orangey yellow sign. So how about processing? Identical, I would say. Yeah, I would say it's identical. Maybe I don't know, guys. This one hard to tell, but I do see more uniformity on the S23's RAW, when it comes to pixel uniformity. But I also see, I would say, 3-4% extra sharpening on the S23 Ultra's RAW. Um, yeah, whereas iPhone is definitely suffering. You see the different type of pixels here. It's suffering like which color to put in that in those pixels. Whereas S23 here, you see the white line here. It's definitely can't figure out either. So I would say it's a draw. It's a draw. Only the color, yeah, the S23 did it better. So The next one during sunset, and let's open the RAW. Yeah, it's gonna tilt. That's why I already tilted the 200 megapixel. I don't know when seriously Microsoft fixed this. So, all right. So here you can clearly see on the back here, it is sunset time. The sun was going down. So, all right. Let's see the details during sunset when the light is going down finally. Pixel level. All right. So here is the difference, guys. You see this beautiful blend, the rusted nut, like it went all the rust and everything. You can clearly see it on the right. Can you see it on the left? The rust. Maybe it's a hint that there was a rust, but you cannot see, right? That is the power of the 200 megapixel. Now, there is a tree branch here. There is a tree branch here on the right. Are you able to see any of those on the iPhone? You can't, right? So it's gonna lose details and it will try to create some artificial details. And whenever it loses, it just eliminates. That's how the digital photography work for cell phones. But this is the first time, the 200 megapixel guys, where it doesn't need any type of artificial processing. It can just give you the pure details because it's a lot of pixels. They don't need to, not in the daylight anymore. Um, so yeah, that's clear differences. But the details difference is not as much as when it was during afternoon when there was a lot of lights, right? It has narrowed down between the iPhone and the 200 megapixel. It's because the 200 megapixel is no longer able to capture those crazy details it would because the pixel size is too small. That's the only reason. Now, if you compare, the reason I avoided the 12 megapixel, I'll show you one here. You can see here it's 4.09 megabyte. It is the 12 megapixel. It just doesn't compare. Why would you even take a 12 megapixel photo when you have 48 megapixel RAW on the iPhone? Like, does it even make sense? Like, it's not a competition. This is like Nintendo Super Mario from back then. It's not even. So this is 12 megapixel on the left, guys. It will be the same with the Samsung's 12 megapixel. It's gonna look similar, right? So yeah, if you want, let me see if I have one. Maybe I can. Yeah, okay. Let's take out the 12 megapixel of the Samsung. Just for fun, guys. I would never use that. I have never used the 12 megapixel of my S um, 22. I only use the 108 megapixel all the time. Let me make it. Okay, so this is the binning 12 megapixel, guys. Just an example. You know what? It's a competition which one is worse than the other. That's how I see it. But if you take my personal opinion, I don't know, like where it got this blue outline. Was it there in the real picture? Only the 200 megapixel can confirm. Let's find out. There was a slight outer. Um, so the 200 megapixel is a benchmark, like to compare other pictures, guys. That's how good it is. So yeah, there was a slight outer lining, but this one exaggerated that. But you know what? If you take it from a technical point of view, I would say the 12 megapixel of the S23 is better than the iPhone's 12 megapixel in this scenario. So yeah, from a pixel level, it is better. All right, so I'm gonna close this. So there you go. This is the 16:1 12 megapixel binning versus the 12 megapixel of the iPhone, guys. And once again, let's close this. Let's bring up the 200 megapixel and the RAW of the iPhone. And that is the RAW. I wouldn't say the RAW and the 12 megapixel mode have that much of a difference, especially at this daylight. Whereas the 200 megapixel, the RAW, and the 12 megapixel of the S23 has massive differences, guys. Massive. All right, guys. So this is nighttime. It was actually nighttime, even though the outside looks there are lots of lights there, but it wasn't. The sun already went down. It's just, I think it was a bright night, like one of those nights where the moon is giving all tons of light, things like that. So I just want to see. Plus, also this phone captures details or lights that doesn't even exist, right? So it was darker than what you see here. So I just want to see like the 200 megapixel. How does it perform at night, right? We want to know. Like, even though I wouldn't recommend like using it at night, but this is just for fun. Let's find out. So, all right, interesting. The color for sure on the right, the 200 megapixel, it's a pink. It's a flower top from, I think, Bouclair it's called, or I don't know where my wife got it from. And you can see the grains here on the floor. On the left, it's totally washed out. I see tons of grains. You know what? The best way to understand this. Okay, now, um, all right. I'm gonna add some brightness here. And this one, I'm gonna decrease the brightness to match with the left. This is how you compare photos by making them identical to each other. I have to increase the brightness more here. How about exposure? No, that's gonna break the picture. So, all right. Now let's understand what's going on. You know what? Even this low light, even though the 200 megapixel was designed for daytime, not for night, but this is just an experiment. And oh my God, guys, still, you see all these tiny details, the grains. It's way like you can see the grains here on the here. You cannot see on the 48 megapixel of the iPhone. Now this, the lights are on, right, inside the home. So it's not like pitch dark or anything like that. So still the 200 megapixel does a bit better. Do I see it from a pixel level? Yeah, we can check from pixel level to see the processing. Okay. So yeah, the S23 could not capture tons of details like it would in the daytime, but overall less green, less noisy. Like I would say like use it, you have that option, but also take a 12 megapixel binning photo as well, just to make sure, if it goes too bad, at least you have a backup. And if it goes too good, there you go. So it is usable, kind of usable. The color accuracy is on the right, not on the left. The left is too yellow. This is morning time, guys. So wanted to experiment with you, like with these phones to see how they perform. Morning time, tricky situation like this where inside is dark, outside is has light. So let's find out the key differences. This is where I can clearly see the 48 megapixel is doing better. At least maybe it's because the focus was not like was missing, but at least like if you see the handles, they look clear. But if you look at the back fences, the S23 looks better. So you know what? I like one area, yeah, maybe it's the just the focus. It focused on the back fence, whereas the iPhone focused on the handles, the inside more. To understand this, how about the sheds? Let's find out. Yeah, there is net in the middle. Hmm. So left is super over processed, right is unable to pick details. Totally missed picking details. So how about, let's see on the left. It could be the focus as well. When it's focusing on the back, it might have missed the details on the right. And not as good as, the previous pictures, the DSLR like. You missed details. And this was quite early in the morning. It's not as bright as this you see in these photos. They were not that bright. So yeah, scenarios like this, I would say avoid the 200 megapixel and use the 12 megapixel instead. So the previous picture, I was not very happy with that because it was kind of like one was focusing on inside, the other one was focusing on outside. So next morning, I went, I took the outside picture. This is morning, guys. It was where the sun just started rising. You can clearly see it here. The orange, you can see. Now, when it comes to color reproduction, I would say it's neither of them. It was more blue than the iPhone. It was more warm than the S23 Ultra. So let me see if I can reproduce the color. Okay, let's go. All right. My God, I can't even see where that thing is. Ah, there you go. So worm, there, not yet. There, they're more accurate. And on the right, worm, I would say close to there. Maybe a little bit less. Not there. It's gonna be hard to make it exact. I would say somewhere around there. So, all right, we'll just leave it like this, and we're gonna look into the details. So let's see, morning time when light is low, how does the S23 Ultras compare with the 48 megapixel of the iPhone? All right. Okay, you know what? I'm gonna increase the brightness of this one a bit because I can't see. And the iPhone automatically brighten than the real picture. So there you go, top level. All right. So we go to molecule level. I call it molecule, it's just pixel level. And let's see how they're doing things. All right. So yeah, the iPhone for sure, you see the white dot here, the black dots, that's called over sharpening. So technically it's still giving you the artificial like clarity or details by doing some software processing by over sharpening, which you can easily the 200 megapixel, whereas the 200 megapixel even at low light in the morning, guys, like sunrise time, you can still take very good real pictures, which you can always add sharpening after. And but when it comes to pure details, it's still better even in the morning. And let's take a look at the spoke here just to make sure. You know what? How about the background? Yeah. Okay. So over sharpened reality versus reality. That's the difference, guys. But the the difference is not dramatic like sorry about that. The difference is not as dramatic as you see when the light level is higher. But still, like if you from a technical view, the S23 200 megapixel is a better picture. You can always I can show you how to any software you can add uh, unless this software doesn't have. I haven't tested this one out. Yeah, it looks like it. This one doesn't have. So you can add sharpness with any software if you need to, but I wouldn't. This is real, right? It looks real. And just to see the a little bit more, how about the spikes of the spokes, sorry, of the bicycle? Let's go to pixel level. Yeah, guys, you see, much better picture on the 200 megapixel. And you can clearly see it's creating this artificial reality, whereas it's just real. So here, once again, I would say um, at least 2 to 3 times pure details and real details, whereas the iPhone may look better because of the over sharpening. It's normal. It's like most of these cameras, when except the 200 megapixel, will do some sort of artificial processing. So we're coming almost to an end. I just want to see like daytime, like indoor pictures, how they go. The iPhone is looks very bright, but if you talk about the real color, it's between the two. It's none of them. I would say the S23 is taking a little bit more closer to reality because you see this is light and this is dark. That's technically how it is. iPhone is doing it too, but the differentiation is less. Now, how about the details, right? That's what we want to know. That details in indoor. I have one last picture, guys, after this for details in indoor. And I would say yes, the S23 200 megapixel still wins details in indoors as well. So molecular level, you can clearly see it's a big win. I would say 2 to 4 times the details. And if we go to pixel level, well, you won't understand anything. This picture is not a good example. All right, so I have another example here. So let's close this too. All right. So I did not rename, but it's gonna be the iPhone on the left, the S23 on the right, guys. So indoor picture. By the way, both are really good. If you never zoom in or things like that, you won't be able to see that much of a difference, right? But when it comes to reality, it will always be the S23 Ultra because of the extreme level of megapixels. It's gonna always take the real details, whereas iPhone will do some sort of processing. So, for example, I'll give you an example here. The Netflix. You can tell the iPhone looks better, right? Because there is a reality here. There is a reason. When you go to the pixel level, you can see the reason. So technically, the iPhone is doing the overprocessing again, like the sharpening. So it's making the white pixels all white. It's making the dark pixels all dark. You can see these are the dark pixels, these are the dark pixels, these are the dark pixels, whereas the light pixels got more light. So it creates that reality. This is the artificial processing once again. Whereas on the right, the because of the lack of light, it's indoor. The also it's very far away. The lens could not see properly. Like this is zooming to a very extreme level, right? So technically, the it retained the originality. So at a pixel level, even though you can say tell like you can argue that no, you know what, the left is better because we can see that's a N, that's a E, that was created by the phone through sharpening. On the right, it's pure details. So even in indoor, if I have to pick a winner, I'm gonna pick the right because for me, like any person who knows how to edit can add sharpness, but what I'm getting here is a tremendous amount of real pixel, which iPhone cannot. So guys, this is my scoring. I took tons of pictures and I scored each picture individually. So this is what I found. So morning and evening, when there is light but not strong, um, like not a lot of light. The iPhone 14 Pro Max RAW, the 48 megapixel, the details scored 37 out of 100. The details quality 45 out of 100. The S23 Ultra 200 megapixel, the details 57 out of 100. And details quality 70 out of 100. The reason is it's pure details. There is no um, artificial like processing going on, nothing. It's just pure details. But the reason it scored only 70 is because of lack of light. It did capture tons of details, but not a lot like as when it gets brighter, the day gets brighter. The S23 Ultra's 50 megapixel RAW. In these examples, the details was 38 out of 100, a little bit more than the iPhone. And the details quality for morning and evening was 48 out of 100. It had less noise and so on, so the quality was a bit better. Afternoon or sufficient light, that's when the iPhone really suffered because of the extra over processing it does. So for that, the details on the iPhone, I gave it a 32 out of 100. The quality only 29 out of 100 because too much sharpening going on, way too much. Like when it's too bright. And one of the reason iPhone looks natural when you look through the pixel level because of the extra black and white it adds. It shifts towards the gray. That's why it looks natural. That's the processing. Maybe the past generation was doing the same. The S23 Ultra 200 megapixel in sufficient light, guys, the details was 87 out of 100. And the details quality, 85 out of 100. That was just like DSLR. Like, it's literally a DSLR. And the S23 Ultra 50 megapixel details was 33 out of 100. Same, almost same like iPhone. But the details quality 39 out of 100 just because it doesn't do all those crazy over sharpening, but nothing compared to the 200 megapixel. Now, Daylight Champion S23 Ultra with almost 5 to 10 times better pixel quality in good lighting condition than the 48 megapixel RAW of iPhone 14 Pro Max. Uh, Indoor daytime things change a bit. The iPhone 14 Pro Max scored detail 62 out of 100, whereas details quality 57 out of 100, which is really better than when it's heavy light. Um, and the S23 Ultra 200 megapixel detail 71 out of 100. It still captures more pixels, more quantity, and the details quality as well 70 out of 100. Not as good as bright daylight, but decent, I would say. And S23 Ultra 50 megapixel, this one suffered compared to the iPhone in indoor. The details was 58 out of 100. Details quality, I would say 53 out of 100. That was my score. It's a bit less than the iPhone when it comes to indoor. Now, for nighttime, use the 12 megapixel for both iPhone and S23. If you want, you can use the 200 or the RAWs, but there is no guarantee that the picture will look that good. You need the artificial processing for nighttime. The all the lens suffer basically, even DSLR. And for landscape lovers, the S23 Ultra, I call it the mini DSLR for daytime. And if you want to see me do more intelligent work like this, I would say there are so many reviews, right? They just say blah blah blah. They continue, but the their material, the quality of their work. Sometimes even I'm surprised that they have 1 billion views and they're just giving false information just because they don't understand the technology. Me, I'm a lazy person. So if you want me to do more videos like this, you need to subscribe and comment. You need to motivate me, guys. Otherwise, it's not going to work. And lastly, a flashback, what you can expect. So on the left, you have the 48 megapixel RAW of the iPhone 14 Pro Max. On the right, you have the 200 megapixel, and you can see clearly how good the 200 megapixel is. All right, guys. So, ciao, take care. And for those who were looking for more information on the 200 megapixel, how it performs, this is the video for you.